Recognizes Representative Luna.
Chairman, for the record, I'd like to submit this letter saying that PEPFAR funding was actually resumed. I know there's been a lot of push saying that the Trump admin had actually cut it, but
so ordered.
Thank you. You know, I want to start out by saying initially I think the idea behind USAID was done with a good intention. However, we've come to find out that the agency has indeed, to a certain extent, operated in a rogue capacity. And USAID has absolutely broken the trust with the American people and not been transparent about where our taxpayer dollars are going. There's an individual by the name of Mike Benz. He actually served over at the State Department for a while, and he's been going on to expose a lot of what USAID has been doing, which, being a member of oversight and being on this committee, I wanted to verify and see if he was telling the truth, which, much to my disappointment, he was. And I say that because I'm disappointed that our taxpayer dollars are funding some of these items. I mean, to just put this in perspective, in 2021, the Special Operations Command under Mark Milley, as chairman of the Joint Chiefs, put out an instruction manual, a vision for 2021 and beyond, that contained instructions and examples on how the military could work with the State Department, Intel Services, and USAID using race riots. Here's examples of some of the instruction manuals here, 1 and 2, in order to destabilize nations. In addition to that, they advocated for setting up job fairs near some of these riots so that disaffected workers could gain employment. Now, as a member of Congress, I ask myself, did anyone in USAID get elected to Congress? How about to a presidency? When you are acting in the shadows and you are destabilizing nations using race wars to do it and then advocating that the military does it, in my opinion, not only do you put the future generations that would have to fight in those wars in jeopardy, but at the end of the day, you're operating without any oversight. So I guess the question for you guys is, Mr. Natsios, is that something that you were aware of? Are you aware that that instruction manual is being promoted not just with the military under Milley, but that USAID may be operating in this capacity? Because in my opinion, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of many of my constituents, I don't think that's where our taxpayer dollars need to be going.
Well, I completely agree with you. Personally, I doubt very much that what you've been told is accurate. But let me just
I'm telling you right now, I brought the receipts, okay? And the reason, I'm not trying to argue with you, but I find this disturbing on so many capacities. And I would like to also just, if I can, sir, Mike Benz, what he's exposing and bringing receipts, I've confirmed it. Thank you for doing that on behalf of the American people, because I understand that when you take on the intelligence agencies, we're also now finding that apparently in this manual that they're also advocating for social media campaigns illuminating controversy to a global audience. I mean, using disinformation campaigns. Is this happening here in our own country? Where's the oversight?
Just to ask you, who in the agency, what bureau,
I just said you can actually find that instruction in this manual that Milley approved.
Military manual, isn't it?
Yes, but Milley approved it. You have it right here. USAID working with government agencies. I mean, this is not.
Wait a second. Did AID say that, or did the military say AID?
Well, that would be the question for you, sir.
Well, I don't
mean,
think
these
AID
operations.
wrote that.
Sorry to interrupt you. These operations that are taking place without government oversight, without the authority of the president, without the authority of Congress. Real men and women serve and they die because of stuff like this. When you destabilize nations without any oversight, we have to fight those wars. You have our chairman right here that literally risked his life. No, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm frustrated. I know it's not necessarily your fault.
But I'm telling you,
but as
nonsense.
the head of the agency, that's not.
I'm telling what Ben's told you is nonsense.
That's not nonsense. These are the information and
AID
forms.
didn't
And
write that.
Ben's put this out to the American people.
AID did not write that,
Sir, I
Congresswoman.
disagree with you on so many levels, and I appreciate you being here
How do
today
you
because
know
this
they
is
wrote
not
it?
easy. How do I know what?
Any person can write AID's name into a manual. It goes on all
Sir,
the time.
they are advocating that the U.S. military
Not
work
the-
with
and not
taxpayer funded
AID.
State Department USAID funds to destabilize nations. That is
Someone in
unacceptable.
special-
I don't care who wrote it. USAID needs to come down and condemn it. They need to provide oversight to Congress on exactly where our tax dollars are going. And I know I might be at 17 seconds with our time, but sir, I hope that you agree. Can I, yes or no, do you agree that this is wrong? Period.
I
Should
think
this
the
be
military
happening?
should be held accountable. I think it's
And should
nonsense.
USAID condemn it?
Nonsense to
Should
suggest that
USAID
AID
condemn
wrote
it?
that.
Should they condemn it?
The military should.
Should USAID also condemn this?
Of course, we don't
Thank you.
comment. AID
Chairman,
does
I
not
yield my time.
comment on military
Thank you,
mandates.
sir.
Ladies,
It's
time's
none of our
expired.
business.
Since there have been a couple more members that have shown up, and I promised you only two, let's do the 5-minute restroom break. You stand in recess for 5 minutes.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Luna from Florida.
Mayor Wu, does the Boston Trust Act restrict communication with federal immigration authorities regarding individuals' immigration status, yes or no?
We do not collect immigration status in law enforcement.
I'd just like to point out, and Mr. Chairman, if I could enter the Boston Trust Act into the record. Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. On section 4AA, a law enforcement official and employment of the city department, agency, or commission shall not, and then A, inquire of an individual on his or her immigration status. Under Title 8, U.S. Code subsection 1373 stipulates that local governments cannot prohibit or restrict communication with federal immigration authorities regarding individuals' immigration status, so your enforcement of this act is in direct violation of that statute. Can you please confirm?
That is not
Thank
the
you, ma'am.
truth.
That's a U.S. code. I don't know about you, but U.S. code does not lie.
We do not ask about
Mayor
immigration
Johnson, I'm not
status, and that
talking
is
to you
what
anymore.
makes
Next
us safe in the
question,
city.
Mayor Johnston, you said in your testimony that the first step you took after illegal aliens arrived was to provide them with housing. Is that correct, yes or no?
Folks that were on the streets freezing to death, we gave access to shelter. Yes, we did.
Thank you. Not to be rude here, but you have a good understanding of what the definition of harboring is, correct?
I do.
Okay. For those that might not, harboring means to knowingly or recklessly provide shelter or place to stay for an illegal alien. And according to Title 8 of U.S. Code subsection 1324, that is also a federal crime. Just to be clear, did you also say that you would be willing to go to jail to stop deportation efforts?
I did say that I'd be willing to stand up for all of our residents, and the context was that was the point at which the administration was threatening to deploy the U.S. military to streets of our cities to
Okay.
pull kids out of schools and churches,
Thank
so we
you.
were worried about that.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into the record an article from CBS.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. In this, it says, Johnson said earlier this week that he's willing to use civil disobedience and, if necessary, going to jail to stop deportations. My final question would be for you, Mr. Mayor Johnson. Do you believe that Chicago's welcoming city ordinance encourages illegal aliens to enter the United States, specifically into Chicago? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. So you don't believe that banning the transfer of individuals into ICE custody for the purpose of civil immigration enforcement encourages illegal immigration into Chicago? Or how about agencies, sorry, one second, or agents not being able to stop, arrest, or detain individuals based solely on their immigration status or administrative warrant?
So we comply with all laws, local, state, and federal.
To me, after this line of questioning, it's very clear that these policies that you have all implicated are active and alive and well in your cities, are in direct violation with U.S. Title 8 Code subsection 1324, and is a federal offense. But you all speak about a broken immigration system, and yet here you guys are aiding and abetting in that entire process. I want to be very clear about something. Open border policies, which is something that you guys are talking about, hurts people on both sides, meaning the people that are coming here illegally and then American citizens as well. I do not think you guys are bad people, but I think that you are ideologically misled, which is why, unfortunately, based on your responses, I'm all going to be criminally referring you to the Department of Justice for investigation. And as soon as I leave here, these will be going over to Pam Bondi. I'm not doing that in an effort to bully you guys, but I do believe that your policies are hurting the American people, and you can make that known with the evidence that you can present to the Department of Justice. But if you guys continue doing what you're doing, you're not going to help anyone. You're going to hurt more people, and that's exactly why I'm tired of it. The American people are tired of it. And Chairman, I yield my time.
Would you yield your last minute?
Yes, sir.
Mayor Adams, you were one of the first mayors in what the media refers to as a blue city, typically, that came out and raised concerns about the influx of illegals pouring into the city of New York. Could you answer the question, what that did to New York City from a budgetary standpoint? Let's not even talk about crime or anything. Let's just talk about from a budgetary, the burden on the citizens of New York City.
As I indicated, Mr. Chairman, we spent $6.9 billion, and the long-term impact of that is extremely significant. After COVID, we had a large number of children who was chronically absent. We could have taken $200 million of that and dealt with that. We have a real mental health crisis in our city. We could have spent hundreds of millions of dollars on that. And so the long-term impact of spending $6.9 billion is going to have serious ramification on the future of New York City. So it's more than just what happened last year or this year. It is what is going to impact us long-term.
And I think that's one of the purposes of this hearing, to talk about the consequences from cities that have huge illegal alien populations. So, Chair, now
Thank you, sir. I now recognize myself for some questions. Mr. Morley, why do you say that the Oswald file was sitting on the desk of James Angleton a week before the assassination? Can you really prove that?
Yes, I can. In the Oswald file, on page 254 and on page 275, you'll see a routing slip on 2 FBI reports about Oswald. And on November 15th, 1963, and November 14th, 1963, you'll see the initials JAR on the routing slip. That stands for Jane Atherton Roman. She was the liaison officer for Mr. Angleton. So when she signed for those 2 FBI reports, we have proof positive that they were on Mr. Angleton's desk.
Are you saying that the 3 men, Angleton, Helms, and Joanides, plotted to kill the president?
No, I am not saying that. I'm saying that they were engaged in covert activities related to Lee Harvey Oswald that have never been disclosed. And that's the imperative for the task force, to obtain those records of that secret operation.
Real quick, I'd like to enter into the record a document that was actually one of these declassified documents of the CIA rejecting the lone gunman theory. Without objection, so ordered. Mr. Morley, who was George Joanides, and why do you emphasize the importance of getting this file?
George Joanides was a career CIA officer. In 1963, he was chief of the Covert Action Branch of the Miami Station. His agents had contact with Oswald before the assassination. His agents in the top secret program, AMSPEL, generated propaganda about Oswald's pro-Castro activities both before and after the assassination. When Mr. Joanides was questioned by congressional investigators here on Capitol Hill in 1978, he was asked who was running these Cuban students who had all this contact with Oswald. The investigators had no idea that they were looking at the answer to their question. And Mr. Joanides, who had been running that Cuban student group, told congressional investigators, "I don't know. I'll get back to you." That was obstruction of Congress. That was an obstruction of an investigation of the president's assassination. His records have never been fully released by the Central Intelligence Agency, and they obviously should be.
Mr. Morley, you actually had written an article specifically addressing a whistleblower that had reports at the CIA, potentially showing information that Oswald was in Mexico City. Can you speak more to that?
I was approached a few years ago by a man who had worked inside the CIA, had a very high security clearance. And in 2018, he came to me and said he was concerned that there was a JFK assassination document that he had read while he was working at the CIA, and he was afraid that it would never become public. The man was taking considerable legal risk by talking to me. He was talking about classified or potentially classified information. So I published his story last year without his name, which is not something that I usually do. I don't like stories with anonymous sources, but I felt that it was important to get out, and he felt it was important too. I have spoken with him, and he says he is willing to come public and tell his name under his own story with assurances that he will not face legal retaliation. I hope that's something that can be arranged in the near future.
Thank you. Mr. Stone, if you could for a moment, you had mentioned earlier about some anomalies in the autopsy. Would you be able to speak to that? I have about a minute and 19 left.
One of the things that we did in our documentary, JFK Revisited in 2021, was show as much as we could about the autopsy, including the fact that there are 40 people still alive, as far as I know, who witnessed at Parkland and at Bethesda a large gaping wound in the back of President Kennedy's right head, indicating a shot from the front that blew out the rear of his. And they all point, if you look, there's a picture, they all point to the same place on camera, right here, in the back of his head. That's one very disturbing point. Additionally, there's a lot of inconsistencies in what was seen and done. The tracking of the bullet, the concept of a magic bullet, which deserves your re-examination. And I think Jim is more expert in this than I. If I can point to him, he's my researcher.
Well, thank you. I'm sure that will be in the next line of questioning. I'd like to now recognize Mr. Garcia for 5 minutes. For over 6 decades, questions have lingered, shrouded in secrecy and speculation. With the recent efforts made to declassify over 80,000 pages of classified documents, fighting against the request of redactions, combined with prior releases under the previous administration, we have an unprecedented opportunity to peel back the layers of the dark day and lay bare the facts for all to see. For the first time in years, we are seeing a complete cooperation between the U.S. government enterprise. Today marks a historical day in our nation's history. After over 80,000 pages were declassified by this administration and previous documents declassified under previous admins were located at the National Archives, it is time to present the findings to the American people so that they can determine the truth for themselves. What has been alarming to me is the amount of stonewalling the federal government put forward to hide this information from the American people. The days of overclassification in the name of national security is coming to an end. The revelations emerging from these files are nothing short of staggering, discoveries that challenge the long-held assumptions and raise profound questions about what we've been told happened on that day. Investigators poring over these pages have uncovered evidence that demands our scrutiny, evidence that suggests the official narrative may have been incomplete at best and at worst deliberately obscured. It has become apparent that in this investigation, some factions of the federal government did not want to be transparent. This type of perspective cannot exist in a free and fair society, and today we have called some great witnesses. To be quite honest, we had more, but for various reasons, those individuals did not want to come forward. I also understand the implications that this has on the family, and it is not our objective to reopen old wounds, but to ensure that what happened to President John F. Kennedy can never happen again in U.S. history. That can only be done if the truth is known to the American people and the facts are able to speak for themselves. The courage of those who are here today, experts in their fields, underscores the gravity of this moment. Their testimony will help us piece together a puzzle that has been fragmented for too long. Let me be clear. There are sincere concerns and discrepancies regarding the Warren Commission pushing forward a narrative without all the facts and, according to testimony of various witnesses, omitting evidence. I would also further argue that the handling of this investigation has largely contributed to the deep distrust the American people have had with the federal government and various intelligence agencies. It is those facts that I hope to present to the American people today. For years, we've relied on a report that, while maybe well-intentioned, was built on a foundation of omissions and half-truths. Now, with these newly declassified documents, we can confront those discrepancies, whether it's inconsistencies in witness accounts, overlooked intelligence, or the troubling indications of interference that investigators are just now bringing to light. This is not about rewriting history for the sake of sensation. It's about honoring our duty to the truth and to the citizens we serve. As we begin this hearing, I ask you to approach it with open minds and steadfast resolve. The American people have waited long enough. They deserve answers, not obstruction. They deserve a government that trusts them with the unvarnished reality, not one that hides behind locked vaults. What we uncover today may unsettle us, but it will also empower us to learn from the past to protect our future and to ensure that transparency triumphs over secrecy. Let us proceed with the seriousness this moment demands for the sake of justice, for the memory of President Kennedy, and for the soul of our republic. Thank you. I would like to now recognize Ranking Member Garcia for the purpose of making an opening statement.
Well, thank you very much, Chairwoman Luna. Before I begin, I just want to
Recognize myself for probably more than 5 minutes. So my first question goes to Judge Tunheim. Why did you tell President Biden that the CIA had deliberately misled your board about the Joanides file?
I did that because the CIA misled us. I mean, we had asked, we were picking up names all along, and people were telling us about other people to ask about. And we've been after the Joanides file for a while, and what we got was something very small. It looked like just a personnel file, what he got paid and, when he separated and that sort of thing. And the staff looked at it and thought it wasn't significant and sent it back. In retrospect, we shouldn't have done that. We should have asked for more. But they were told the staff was told that was all they had on Joanides, which is clearly incorrect. So that's why I said that we had been deliberately misled by the CIA as to the nature of the Joanides files that were there. And I think those files likely are still there and can be released and should be released.
Yeah, I'd like to actually know for the public that's tuning in that we have been in talks with Director Radcliffe, and although he's been supportive, there has, in my opinion, been an orchestrated effort previously to hide this information. And so they're, while actively searching for it, also having issues locating it. So we are trying on our end, but you are correct, sir, in that observation. And I thank you for being here today to testify to that. My next question is actually for Dr. Curtis. Was there anyone specifically on the Warren Commission that made the attempted effort, or that you felt you were being pressured to either be silenced on what you saw and or bullied and or threatened into not speaking the truth?
I was never pressured to be silent, but I did have action with Arlen Specter that was not good.
What happened, sir?
He did a deposition for me and had not told me about it ahead of time. The nurse leaned in the operating room that morning and said, the Warren Commission is in town. If you have time, go down and talk to them. So I finished my cases and went down and talked to our inspector. He was friendly and nice and was very well groomed in a beautiful suit, shiny shoes. And I had my hair all messed up in a scrub suit, dirty shoes. So it was definitely top down. And he was friendly and nice, and then started asking me biographical questions that made it obvious to me that he knew the answers to the question before he asked it. And so that made me wonder, why on earth does he know all that about me? Then he said, what did you see about the exit wound? Well, there wasn't one. Really? No, there wasn't one. And then, so he asked me 4 more times about the exit wound. And the last time he asked me is, Dr. Curtis, every other doctor has suggested and testified that there was an exit wound. And you didn't see it? No, I didn't. And so during the visit I had with him was maybe about 20 or 30 minutes. And during that time, he made me feel that I had a reason for being in the trauma room to be sure the president died. Now, I had a wife and 2 babies at home that were completely dependent on me. If I lost my residency, it would be terribly a big problem for me. So he said, okay, now, Lon, you should wait here for a little bit before we do your deposition. I said, deposition? He said, yes, you're having to give a deposition today. And I said, well, I didn't know that. He said, well, I sent you a letter, which I didn't get. He said, do you want a lawyer? And I said, do I need a lawyer? He said, fella, you're the only one in this room that knows if you need a lawyer. Do you want me to get you one? I said, no, I don't think so. But he asked me over and over again about the exit wound. then we got in on, then he got the committee together, and nobody that I'd ever seen before sitting behind the table, and put me on a high stool uncomfortably, and I remember my foot kept slipping off that bottle rung, and then started asking me questions. Never did bring up the exit wound. He never did say a thing about it. Till at the last, he said, "Dr. Curtis, did you see anything that was like a puncture or a opening in the trachea and or the throat?" And I said, "No." He said, but then I thought, well, the blood was right over that, so I couldn't have seen it. So I said, but that doesn't mean it wasn't there. Thank you for Dr. Curtis. That's what he wanted.
Would it be fair to say that other doctors that you worked with that were in the room that day that were responding to President Kennedy's wounds had the same observations as you? Yes or no? There
were only two of us that thawed the throat before the tracheostomy was done.
Okay.
And is that the answer?
Whatever you would like to share with Congress, sir.
So I saw it, and there was no exit wounds. That's what our inspector wanted, was an exit wound, because the magic bullet had to exit the throat to go into Governor Conley, which couldn't have happened. The magic bullet would have had to make 3 90-degree turns to do what it did. It was coming down from the window, would have had to turn right angle to be horizontal through the neck, would have had to turn right again to go over to where Governor Conley was, would have to turn right again to go into Governor Conley. It doesn't work.
Yes, sir, I can speak for myself. I do not believe in the magic bullet theory.
Bullets don't do that.
No, do not. I do not, sir. My next question is for Mr. Douglas Horn. To your knowledge, did even the Dallas Police Department or the FBI subject Lee Harvey Oswald to a paraffin test to determine whether he had fired the gun on November 22nd, 1963?
I'm going from memory, but I believe the FBI did, and he tested negative for firing a rifle.
So
the paraffin test on his face shows he did not fire a bolt-action rifle, especially not a lousy rifle like the Mannlicher Carcano, which was an 1894 design or something.
What is the status of the record interview the author William Manchester conducted with Jacqueline Kennedy? Mr. Horn?
Well, my understanding is that, first of all, the Kennedy family liked William Manchester initially because he had written a campaign book in 1960 about the campaign. So they said, okay, why don't you write the book about the death of Jack, about the death of President Kennedy. When the book was reviewed by Jacqueline and Robert F. Kennedy, apparently Robert F. Kennedy had many objections, and so the Kennedy family sued Mr. Manchester when the books were in galley form, and they required that he take out certain portions of the text. So the lawsuit, what the lawsuit did was it said, the portions of the text that you removed will be sequestered until 2067, and the interviews you did with Jacqueline Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy will be sequestered, withheld until 2067. So that was the result of that lawsuit. And so what we read today when we read Manchester's book is a sanitized or redacted version of his book, and we won't know what was removed until 2067. That's just very unfortunate, and I know Chairman Thunheim really made an effort to get Caroline Kennedy to agree to lift that court seal, and she didn't want to.
Also, to your knowledge, which autopsy photos are missing?
Okay, I'd be glad to answer that question. I have a list here, and it's reasonably succinct, so bear with me.
Well, you have me and Garcia here, so I think
okay, here we go.
we're at your disposal.
Here we go. I mentioned 8 sets that I know with confidence from studying the evidence as an analyst are missing. First, an overhead wide shot of JFK's body taken from a stepladder. taken by John Stringer, the Navy photographer. He testified under oath to that. Second, a large bruise atop the right lung, taken from inside the interior of the chest after the lungs were removed. So this is a large blood clot up above where the apical portion of the lung was. And that's been testified to by both Dr. Humes and Stringer that they took those photographs, so they're not in the record. Third, an entrance wound in the lower right of the skull with the scalp reflected, taken from outside the skull. And next, that same entrance wound in the lower right of the skull with the photo taken from inside the cranium after the brain was removed. So what's at issue with these two photos being missing is they would have determined definitively where was the entrance wound in the back of the head.
Would have been one of the Harper
No.
separate?
No, separate issue.
Okay.
The condition of the back of the, here's another missing photo. The condition of the back of the head after embalming and reconstruction was completed, which still showed an exit defect that could not be closed. The witness that claimed that was Sandra Spencer, a Navy photographer's mate who our general counsel, Jeremy Gunn, considered our most reliable medical witness. And so what she did was she developed color negatives and then prints of the president's body, postmortem photographs, but she said, when we deposed her, she said, oh, these pictures in the archives are horrible. We see open body cavities and a lot of blood, and the president looks really bad. She said, the photographs that I developed, he had been cleaned up, the head had been reconstructed, but there was still a hole in the back of his head even after the head was reconstructed.
So you have witness testimony that the archives photos do not reflect what?
Yes,
okay.
yes, she testified under oath to that fact. Another missing photograph is a series, is that Robert Knudsen was a White House social photographer. He was involved with developing photography the weekend after the assassination by the president's military physician, Dr. Berkeley. So Knudsen testified to the HSCA that I developed a black and white film pack, negatives, black and white negatives, showing numerous probes in the president's body. And of course, probes are important because they determine bullet tracks. Where do bullets go in, where do they come out, if they come out. And he remembered developing them and holding them up to the light in the darkroom after they were developed, and he remembered seeing probes in the body in this black and white film pack. And in the official autopsy collection, there was no black and white film pack used in photographs of the body. They're 4x5-inch duplex film. They're not black and white film packs. And there are no photographs of probes in the body in the official collection. And one of the people we interviewed was Dr. Carney, who was a resident at Bethesda. And when we told him, Jeremy Gunn and I, when we told him that there were no photographs of probes in the body in the official autopsy photo collection, he became visibly agitated and his face turned bright pink. And he said, I came in and out of the morgue many times as the resident on duty that night, but I saw flashbulbs going off when there were probes in the body. And you're telling me there's no photos in the collection? We said, that's right. So two more that are missing, and that concludes my answer. Black and white prints were seen by numerous people showing a large exit defect in the rear of JFK's head. So Mr. Knudsen, the White House photographer, Navy Chief Knudsen, showed such photos to another White House photographer, Joe O'Donnell, the week after the president died. Black and white prints showing a big exit wound in the back of the head. There are no such photos in the collection, but Joe O'Donnell said there were, and another witness that saw those photos was Navy Corpsman Dennis David. And he was shown those photographs by the Bethesda Naval Hospital audiovisual department head, Lieutenant Commander Pitzer. The last type of photo that's missing, black and white prints of an entry wound high in the forehead, up here. Not in the temple, but high in the forehead, above the right eye. Black and white prints showing that were shown by Mr. Knudsen, by Chief Knudsen to Mr. O'Donnell. They were also seen by Dennis David when Lieutenant Commander Pitzer showed him autopsy photographs, And a third witness surfaced in the year 2010, Quentin Schwen, who lives in Cleveland, and he, during a federal job interview, believe it or not, during a federal job interview with an intelligence agency, when he was at the Rochester Institute of Technology, majoring in photography, he was shown a color-positive transparency showing an entry wound high in the forehead of JFK. So that's my kind of lengthy answer on which photographs am I confident are missing.
Thank you very much. And then real quickly, because my last line of questioning is for Mr. Bolden, what is the evidence that you refer to about an interruption of chain of custody of President Kennedy's body prior to the start of the autopsy shortly after 8 p.m.?
Right. Yeah, because of this venue and this format, I'll have to give you a streamlined answer. I'm sure everyone will appreciate that. We know for a fact that the motorcade from Andrews Air Force Base with a bronze Dallas casket in it arrived in front of Bethesda at 6:55 p.m. Remember that time. That's documented by the Secret Service report of Agent Clint Hill and by newspaper reporters. But the review board obtained an extremely important document written by a Marine Corps non-commissioned officer, Sergeant Boyjan of the United States Marine Corps. He led a team of Marines from the Marine barracks in Washington, D.C. to provide physical security at the autopsy. This was not the honor guard in dress uniforms. These were Marines from the Marine barracks to provide physical security. He wrote a report of what happened that night, and he wrote in his report dated November 26th, 1963, he wrote that, and he's only talking about what happened with the president because that was his job, was to guard the president's body during the autopsy. He wrote that the casket arrived at 1835 hours. 1835 hours. That's 6:35 p.m., 20 minutes before the motorcade from Andrews arrived. And there is a considerable amount of evidence, a wide range of evidence, that the president's body really arrived by helicopter before the motorcade from Andrews. That's the broken chain of custody. And the issue here, it's a very important issue. The issue here is, if Sergeant Boyjan's report is correct, and he authenticated that to the review board staff, he authenticated that to me with a written letter and with a telephone interview. If his report is correct, then what was happening with the president's body between 6:35 p.m. and 8 o'clock when the autopsy of record started? That's almost an hour and a half. And the simple answer, the streamlined answer, appears to be that many metal fragments were removed from President Kennedy's body before the autopsy of record began. We have witnesses for this.
Those would be the bullet fragments, correct?
Yes. Tom Robinson of Gawler's Funeral Home saw a vial full of 10 tiny fragments, which he saw picked out of President Kennedy's brain. They were never placed in the record. Dennis David, HM1 Corpsman Dennis David, typed a receipt for a federal agent of 4 large bullet fragments. He thought it would be mass larger than 1 bullet and less mass than 2 bullets, somewhere between 1 and 2 bullets, 4 large fragments. He typed the receipt. He was allowed to handle the fragments by the federal agent. We wouldn't do that today. And the agent took the receipt, the typewriter ribbon, and the fragments, and they were never introduced in the record. So we also have 2 witnesses. To make a long story short, we have 2 witnesses to surgery on the cranium to get this evidence out. And Dr. Humes, the chief pathologist, said under oath to the Warren Commission that I never, to Arlen Specter, I correct myself, Dr. Humes said under oath that I never had to perform a craniotomy. I never had to saw the skull open to get the brain out. And when Dr. Fink arrived late for the autopsy, he was the outsider, the Army guy, arrived at 8:30. Humes told Dr. Fink, no sawing of the skull was necessary. So the end of my response here is that we have 2 witnesses, X-ray technician Ed Reed, under oath to the review board, and Tom Robinson, to both the House committee and to the review board. Tom Robinson told the same account to both the HSCA and to us that he saw Dr. Humes saw the skull open. So I think bullet fragments were removed from the president's body before the autopsy of record began, and that's why we should have no confidence whatsoever in the autopsy.
Thank you very much. My next question is for you, Mr. Bolden. Mr. Bolden, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, sir, thank you for sticking with us so long. I know it's been kind of long, but if you can, real quick, what did you observe about the Secret Service investigation of President Kennedy's assassination?
It was one of the greatest cover-ups of a crime. Now, the Secret Service initiated so many cover-ups. Number one, the number of bullet fragments that were found in the car. Harry Gagnon, on November the 26th, looked at the car, the assassination automobile, and he found two cartridges laying on the front floorboard. They were very damaged. And he also observed a bullet hole in the windshield. And he was told not to let the FBI know about any of this and to get the car to Michigan somewhere where they could put a new windshield in and clean the car up. Now, the biggest thing that I was talking about was the violations of constitutional rights that followed, especially in my case, simply because I wouldn't be quiet. I was framed, I was arrested, they attempted to declare me insane. And I was put in Springfield, Missouri, forced to take drugs, mind-boggling drugs. Now that stems from the fact that on the 18th of November 1964, I was called to Washington, D.C. And so they told me they were going to give me another name, change my identity, and that I would become another individual. And that, in fact, did happen. And I think that they were setting me up for assassination myself. I think that that's what was going on. Because when they sent me to the penitentiary, they made it clear that it was a case of my being so agitated about the assassination that I wouldn't keep quiet. And so they gave me 2 trials. They had 2 convicts that I had arrested. And they put me on trial twice in 1 month. And that was never heard. They kidnapped me out of Washington, D.C., violation of my constitutional right, denied me an attorney, simply because they said I was not a player. I was not a team player. I wouldn't keep my mouth shut. And so when they did that to me, they sent me to Springfield and put me in a camp there, where I was threatened by one of the inmates. And they used that as an excuse. That on July the 7th, 1967, 2 guards came to the camp and got me and took me to what they call 2 1-E's. And they undressed me, got me naked, threw me in a cell. And the next thing I know, they were forcing medication on. The guard came by, he says, we have medication time. I said, I haven't been before a court. No court has said that I was insane. You're supposed to take me to the court. but they didn't do that. They forced me to take these drugs. One of them knocked me out. I fell on the floor. It had to go into the hospital to have it looked at. And this is how they treated me now. I was kidnapped out of Washington, D.C., brought to Chicago, denied an attorney by the United States attorney. It would be handwritten. I was then not given any food on that night, which was May 18, 1964. They didn't let me eat anything because they kept talking about I was not a team player and I didn't keep the mouth shut. And this is how that they control the cover-up. Agents became afraid. They didn't want to talk. And there were so many cover-ups. The chief Rowder put out a memo that said any agent that gave information other than the information that he would provide would be censored severely. Well, when they found out that I wanted to go to the Warren Commission, who was investigating the case appointed by President Johnson, I asked to go testify to the Warren Commission about what the Secret Service were doing and the type of protection that President Kennedy was receiving. And so they brought me from Washington, D.C., denied me an attorney. Every constitutional right was violated, and forced me to take medical drugs, strip me naked, remove me to such prisons. Now here I was, an ex-Secret Service agent. They locked me up with people whom I had put in jail myself. I was threatened by these people. And it really affected me and my wife, Paulina Luna, who stuck with me throughout this ordeal. And to anybody who's listening, if you have a good wife like God was, keep her. Keep her, because that's the scripture said. A double band is not easily broken. And they're talking about people like my dear wife who passed away in 2005. So I just want people to know that the constitutional rights, when I was on trial in July the 12th, the jury was debating whether or not on a verdict. The judge called the jury report and told the jury, in my opinion, Bolton is guilty of all the counts in the indictment, which were 3 counts. That jury did not find me guilty. So the judge set another trial for 2 weeks later. For 2 weeks now, a second trial. And we asked for a new judge. The judge himself, in violation of the federal procedure, heard the motion himself. And the law says that if a complainant files a motion for change of judge, that the judge who the complainant shall not make the decision as a prejudicial action. So here I am now. It took me 90 years. 90 years for anybody to look into it. It broke my heart. Because America is supposed to be the leader in constitutional constitutional right is supposed to be the leading device. Yet, I felt so abandoned by the system. But I'm glad I did. And I would do it again because the American people need to know the truth.
Well,
And the truth will set you free.
well, thank you, Mr. Bolden. And again, thank you for your testimony. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Tyler Nixon. I'm counsel for Mr. Bolden, and I can just give a minute of clarification here. Mr. Bolden was, in fact, prosecuted on what, I've delved into this case very deeply. This was one of the most rigged. You want to talk about weaponization of the judicial system and the justice system. This man was railroaded. He had a judge, as he said, who told the jury that he believes that he was guilty. He set a new trial, and the two accusing witnesses were two men that he had arrested previously as counterfeiters. And the main witness who purportedly, out of the goodness of his heart, went to the head of the Secret Service, Maurice Martineau, to report the supposed solicitation of a bribe, which was the accusation, admitted in his trial about 4 months later that he perjured himself in Mr. Bolden's trial.
Yes, Mr. Nixon, we actually would be happy to collect all that information off record, but just due to process, as you're not a stated witness, we just have to be careful about, but we, I will say, at least I speak for myself, I do not believe that Mr. Bolden was actually guilty of a crime. I do believe that he was falsely, if you will, framed. And so on behalf of the U.S. government, we'd like to apologize to him and his family, because obviously that's not how we are supposed to treat people in this country. And so you have our sympathy and as well as our apology for the treatment of that. But we will be happy to follow up on that, because as stated, we would like to collect and make sure that this does not happen to future individuals, and that requires changing of laws and also putting protections in place. But I would like to thank all of you. We've gone way over our time today, but the fact that you all traveled in and were willing to come testify, especially you, Dr. Curtis, Mr. Bolden, Judge Tenheim, Mr. Hardway, Mr. Horn, and Ms. Coe, thank you so much for coming here today. If you do have any other information you would like to submit to the task force, we will happily accept that, and we will be following up on some of these suggestions that you have all made today. And with that, without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days in which to submit materials and additional written questions for the witnesses, which will be forwarded to the witnesses for their responses as well. If you'd like to submit anything else to the record, we'd be happily accepting of that. If there are no further business, without objection, the task force stands adjourned. Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank you all for being here today. One of the biggest concerns I have with this whole discussion on AI is a failure to admit, first and foremost, that it does appear that in the next 10 years that the way that we have grown up and know life with AI will be forever changing. With that being said, there are a few differences that I think most people acknowledge, in that AI lacks a few things, one being a soul, also empathy, and we are not gods or God, and so I think that we're playing a dangerous game, especially moving into a future that's simply unknown right now, especially if we do not essentially develop the first AI super weapon, essentially that's what this is, whoever does will essentially control the world. And I think that that's a very serious topic that needs to be discussed right now. But specifically to transhumanism and coupling of AI with humanity, what regulatory frameworks can be established to ensure AI-driven transhumanist technologies like brain-computer interfaces prioritize human safety and consent? I'm opening this up to everyone on the panel. I have a few questions, so I'd like to get through this, so just please limit your responses. Mr. B, if you want to go first, or down there, either or.
I'll just briefly say, Congresswoman, that there's been a lot of work done on AI governance by multiple bodies and entities. I just want to cite something that actually came from the Biden administration on this, about the applicability of so many existing laws and regulations to AI. And their leading regulators for 4 large agencies said before leaving office that basically we have the ability to enforce the respective laws and regulations to promote responsible innovation and automated systems, and that basically AI does not get an exemption from civil rights laws, from consumer protections, unfair and deceptive practices, fraud, so on and so forth. So we have a lot of policies that do regulate many of the fears you're raising.
Is there the possibility of regulation, though, that exists that would enable transhumanist enhancements that exacerbate social inequalities or basically financial inequalities, creating an elite class of enhanced individuals? I bring that up because we're talking about low-level jobs potentially being removed from the workforce, people that have and can afford the ability of, for example, implementing or implanting chips, given access to unknown amounts of knowledge, and essentially creating the first superhuman. This is a real concern. I know it might come across as funny to other people, but I am genuinely concerned about this. From a bipartisan perspective here, we're talking about humanity versus machine. Hopefully, in a flowery world, we would have it set up to where it could improve society for the best. But I'm also in politics, and I have a very, unfortunately, sometimes negative perspective on the world because I've seen the worst of humanity in this job.
So science fiction speaks of this a lot. I mean, there's a lot of people who think about this notion of haves and have-nots and how technology will exacerbate that. And this can depend on how it's available and how much money it costs and who can get it. Nina Farahay writes a lot about AI and brain interfaces and what we can do to protect humanity in that world. So I do recommend talking to her. She's the smartest person I know on that particular question.
Okay. Also, what role can AI itself play in monitoring and mitigating risks associated with transhumanist technologies, such as detecting biases in enhancement distribution?
I think a lot of the conversation so far, since ChatGPT came out, is about foundation models and how they operate and how they hallucinate and some of the shortcomings of them and the risks with them. But a lot of these problems can be overcome at the application layer. And Ms. Miller and I represent companies who build applications on top of many models. And so if you think about that framework, what you understand then is the responsibility of some of these outcomes, the responsibility of some of these behaviors isn't just left to the model, it's left to the vendor and the developer
So how you train
of how you train it, how you package it, how you check for issues and guardrails and all of that.
So real quick, I have one more question, just real quick, yes or no. Would either or any of you be in favor of the U.S. government through either the DIA, NSA, all agencies involved, Pentagon, even creating a super AI, I would maybe term it guardian AI, to actually train up based on our principles to defend the United States and potentially world against maybe a more nefarious actor like China creating the same super weapon, because AI can only fight AI. I think you guys would all agree with that, in an effort to defend the home front.
I think we can't do that yet.
Not yet, but maybe in the future.
Maybe in the future.
Okay.
Maybe, but I need more about the details about what that means, because there's a lot to unpack there.
Unqualified, probably, to weigh in on that one.
I'm supportive of any sort of sovereign AI that we think
Sovereign
makes sense.
AI would be a good name.
I think government alone cannot do it. I think public-private partnership should be required in this case, because otherwise we will not be able to confront China.
Thank you.
I yield back, Mr.
Will the gentleman yield?
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Ms. Luna
Mr.
from
Chairman,
Florida.
point of inquiry, did you skip me in the order on purpose? Just curious.
It must have been an oversight, Mr. Moskowitz.
Well, this is the
Chair
Oversight
recognizes
Committee,
Ms.
which
Luna.
has lots of oversight.
Gentlemen, please.
Chair
I'd like to ask
recognizes
my
Ms. Luna.
Just, suppressing free speech.
It's Ms. Luna.
Thank you very
You're
much,
recognized.
Chairman. First and foremost, I would like to take this opportunity to educate the American people on what's really happening right now with these riots. So I see right now there's a lot of back and forth and finger pointing, but the fact is that there is a financial tie to these riots, tied to immigration, that actually leads right back to the Communist Chinese Party. Straight up, the LA riots have been organized by an organization dubbed PSL, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, funded by billionaire Chinese activist Neville Singham, who spends part of his year by living in Shanghai. In addition to that, although he is not a registered foreign agent, he accepts a lot of money from the CCP and then turns around and funnels it right into some of these violent protests that we're seeing. But it doesn't just stop there. This is not the only organized protest that's using brown people and immigrants as a ruse to push their communist and Marxist agenda. Mr. Waltz, thank you for coming in today to testify, or Mr. Walls. Real quick, is it true, yes or no, that you are speaking at the June 14th Twin Cities No King rally?
I can't confirm that right now. That
Okay.
could be true.
Okay. Just so you know, they're advertising you speaking there.
Okay.
The graphic's actually on X right now. I'd be happy to provide it for you, so I'll take that as probably speaking. Is it true also, I know on your campaign, that you had admitted to visiting China anywhere from 15 to 30 times, sir? Yes or no, please?
I did live in China and
No, visiting, sir, in addition to living there and in addition
Yes,
to having, okay.
that's correct.
All right, also too, I'd like to note that during your time in Congress that you filed for a $5 million earmark that actually was secured. $2 million of it went to the Harmel Institute that actually collaborated with the Wuhan Institute. Also, the Department of Homeland Security, sir, just to you, so that you're tracking, actually had an internal memo that was released that stated that the government of China considered you a prime target for influence operations. I'm letting you know that now because I do believe that you should be made aware of, if you are not already, that you are working with and going to be speaking at an organization and rally that not is just funded by Christy Walton, the heiress of Walmart, but also has ties to the Chinese Progressive Association, largely funding it, that actually brags on their website that they are pro-Maoist. Also, too, funded by the National Endowment for Democracy. I know there's a lot of people on this committee that don't like billionaires interfering in politics, but say nothing when George Soros gets over $260 million from USAID through the last administration that's then funneled into some of these nonprofits and organizations. So I guess my question for you guys is, now that I've made you aware that these riots are not about illegals and they're not about immigrants, if they did, they would have been protesting under Barack Obama, who's also dubbed the deporter-in-chief. And frankly, I think many of you would say that Barack Obama was a good president. Are you going to say that Barack Obama wasn't a good president? Yes or no, Governor Waltz? Do you think he was a good president?
Do I think Barack Obama was a good
Correct.
president? I think he did a good job.
Okay, how about you, Governor Pritzker?
I think he did a good job, yes.
Hochul?
Hochul, and yes, he did do a good job.
Okay, next. Perryman?
I think President Obama did a good job.
So then you would understand that Barack Obama had the very same policies, for the most part, on immigration that Republicans are parroting today, and yet you guys are sitting here saying that we're Gestapo. And what I would tell you is that what happens with open borders is that the real people that are coming here, the ones that are exploited, actually it hurts people on both sides, not just Americans, but the illegals. Some of you had said here to the actual committee that you are doing what you can to assist these people, but what I would say is that your policies aren't actually done from a place of understanding and sympathy. I would say that it's actually doing the exact opposite. And when you use brown people, just like they use black people with BLM and Marxists during BLM to usher that in, when you use brown people and you put Mexican flags with them saying that you stand up for illegal immigrants, but you follow the money and it's going back to the Communist Party, what you're essentially doing is using your platform as elected officials, the trust that the American people have put in you, essentially to usher in communism. You're not actually fighting for American values. Don't roll your eyes, because it's a serious topic and that's where the money's coming from. So now I'm informing you, so now you guys can make your decisions, but please be informed, sir, Mr. Walls, that if you truly do uphold the American ideologies and perspectives on the Constitution, you should not be speaking at that rally. I've given you the correct information, and as of right now, I've authorized a letter to be sent to my office to the President of the United States to rescind millions of dollars in funding that we know are going to the No Kings protests that were authorized and basically given under the last administration. That is what Congress is supposed to do, not point fingers, not blame people, but actually ensure that the American people are protected and not fighting for foreign interests, foreign governments, and also the communist.
Will the gentlelady yield for a question?
No.
You don't want to tell us what your evidence is of all this connections?
Actually, no, I will yield
You know,
to that.
I appreciate
No,
Mr.
no,
Goldman, you'll get
I
5
will.
minutes. Take your
Let
word
me answer
for
the
it.
question.
But
Let me answer
you'll
the question.
appreciate we might want actual evidence.
I would be happy to provide that, and I'd also be happy to inform Chairman that actually we have a letter of which you can sign on to. I know you like to sign on to letters with us, especially on the Epstein stuff. But we actually have a letter going out to Neville Singham on Friday, and it's actually signed by every single member of Oversight. I'd like to extend that to you because that letter is calling him to testify, and it's also calling for his financial transactions. And do you agree, sir, that we should not be accepting money from the Communist Chinese Party? I think anyone on this platform would agree that that should not be accepted, correct?
I would like for you to actually present evidence rather than just, quote, inform the witnesses. And now that they're informed, they should assume that
I
what
don't
you
disrespect
say is
you. I'm
true
going to answer your question. We are having a hearing on it where we can present all the evidence.
Order.
No, but let's have this dialogue.
Yeah, go ahead. You're recognized, Ms. Luna.
We are going to be having a hearing, and you can gavel on to the hearing. I'd appreciate you to do it because the fact is that the Democrat Party, remember,
Is it going to be as good as the Biden impeachment hearing?
Mr. Goldman, you'll have 5 minutes in a moment.
Let's focus real quick.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
like to
she's
go
out of time. I just
further.
think you're trying not to let me talk.
guys, if you guys want to talk about it, I'll answer the question. But Mr. Singham is also funding Code Pink through his wife.
You know, it's my turn.
And
Can we ask Elon to divest from China while we're at
The
it?
lady's time's expired. The lady's time's
We'll
expired.
be having the hearing. Y'all are invited. We might have you guys
All right,
back.
thank you. Before we go.
Madam Chair, can I have ask a parliamentary question of you?
Yeah, sure.
Does this subcommittee have the authority to do subpoenas?
Task force. So the task force, to answer that question, has to do it through full committee.
Okay.
So, and also in regards to immunity, which to Mr. Borland's point, we are going to be doing a motion to ask for immunity for you and a few other people to come into a skiff and tell us what you know without being subject to the Espionage Act, et cetera.
Thank you, ma'am.
So that's just kind of an update. But as a task force, because we're not a full subcommittee and there are certain authorities that haven't been granted to us, probably because they don't want us to have it. But there are ways to work around it, so we're kind of figuring that out. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9C, the majority and minority will have an additional 30 minutes each to ask questions of the witnesses without objection. So ordered. With that being said, if you guys want to jump in the queue, I know Representative Crane, Burleson, and likely Burchett have a few more questions. I'll just start out with 2, and then I'll pass the buck to Burleson. Burchett, do you have anything? Burchett and then Crane. Just real quick, Mr. Knapp, and short answers, please, because of time. How much of these alleged Russian crash retrieval documents have already been physically out there? So, I mean, percentage-wise of the documents that you submitted to Congress, what was public already and what was not newly released?
Maybe 1%.
Okay, so the rest of it should be predominantly new information.
Yep.
Also, can you just elaborate real quick? I know you had, I think, mentioned a Thread 3 program, but also alleged in those documents, I got through maybe half of them last night. There's a lot, and I don't speak Russian, contrary to what my people might allege. What does the Thread 3, was there any specific programs that existed within the Soviet government or groups to specifically investigate this by name real quick?
It's a number. There's a number in those documents I gave you. There was a larger program that actually had 3 sub-programs that was, Thread 3 was the name I got, and then the DIA guys who looked at it figured out there was a much larger organization.
And it's listed in those documents?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Real quick, I'd like to ask the committee to replay that video that Burleson had played earlier. I want to ask every witness here, specifically ones that have sensor training or have been able to recognize some of this movements real quick. So if you guys can please roll that real quick. Okay, while this is still rolling, Mr. Nusatelli, real quick yes or no answers. Are you aware of anything in the government, United States government arsenal that can split a Hellfire missile like this?
No.
And do whatever blob thing it did and then keep going? Nothing?
Nothing.
All right, how about you, Chief Wiggins?
Nothing to my knowledge, ma'am.
Okay, and how about you, Mr. Borland?
I prefer to answer that in a skiff.
Okay, does this video scare you guys? Yes or no?
Yes.
Wiggins?
Yes.
Nat?
I had a different reaction. I was really happy that it got out. Thanks for providing
Curiosity
that,
kills the
Congressman.
cat. All right, Mr. Borland?
Yes, for.
Okay. All right, that is the end of my questioning. I'd like to now recognize Mr. Crane.